This lecture is brought to you by the Jerusalem Sober House. The Jerusalem Sober House is a structured, sober living facility located in the heart of Jerusalem, Israel. For more information on the Jerusalem Sober House and the services we provide, please visit us online at www.jerusalemsoberhouse.com. We hope you enjoy this lecture.
So another few days, we're going to have Pesach, right?
Yeah.
And Jews all over the world are going to be celebrating Pesach. I wonder if they really know what they're doing. You know, Yetzias Mitzrayim, the deliverance from Egypt, was a big thing. Gave us our independence. But if Pesach was meant to be an Independence Day, it's a bit of an overkill. You know what you do on Independence Day? Yeah. Yom Ha'atzmaut here is probably just 4th of July in America, right? Mm-hmm. You celebrate parades, speeches, picnics, firecrackers, whatever, fireworks. What do you got to do it for 7 days for? Huh? 1 day is enough. And it's not only doing it for 7 days, but you know what kind of preparation goes into those 7 days? Yeah, you got to sterilize the house. Yeah, make the house surgically sterile from chametz. So, all right, so I guess we could say we Jews do things a little bit excessive. So we have an Independence Day for 7 days, eating matzah for 7 days. So, okay. Comes Friday night and you make Kiddush. So what do you say in Kiddush? Zecher L'tziat Mitzrayim. Wait a minute. Independence Day is once a year, not every week. Okay? So Shabbat is Zecher L'tziat Mitzrayim. Okay. In the Tefillah for Sukkot and Shavuot and Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, Zecher L'tziat Mitzrayim. You know, it's going to be a little bit much. And then every morning I put out a tefillin, right? Tefillin, Zecher L'tziat Mitzrayim. It's Zecher L'tziat Mitzrayim. You know, wherever you turn, you're being hit with the Zecher L'tziat Mitzrayim. Okay? Seems to me it's a little bit of an overkill for celebrating Independence Day. I never really understood what it was all about. Until one day when I had a gentleman in Gateway, Shlomo N. You know Shlomo?
He was my counselor.
Huh?
He was my counselor at Mike's.
He was?
My counselor at Mike's.
Okay. So, Shlomo had a long history of addiction. And he did well at Gateway. But I know if he goes back to New York, he's gone. Right? He'll get together with his cronies and he's gone. So I kept him in Pittsburgh. After a few months, he says to me, you know, going to be Pesach, and I want to be at my father's Seder. I figured, look, I got to take a chance. I'm not going to keep him prisoner here forever. So he went to New York. He did very well. Came back after Pesach. And he tells me, when my father started saying the Haggadah, saying Avadim Hayinu, I said to him, Abba, were you personally ever a slave? You say Avadim Hayinu, yeah, our ancestors thousands of years ago were slaves in Egypt. But you personally were not a slave. You don't know what it means to be a slave. I can tell you what it means to be a slave. Because all those years that I was on drugs, I was not a free person. I could not make choices that I wanted. I did things in my life that I never thought I was capable of doing. But I had to do them because the drugs demanded it. So the drugs were my taskmaster. And I was a slave. Today I'm free. Today I know what it means to be a Ben Cholim. when he told me that, I got a totally different view of what Yetziat Mitzrayim is all about. It's not about a history of Egypt. We don't have to talk about the history of Egypt every Shabbat and every day and 6 times a day. But what Yetziat Mitzrayim is about is learning the value of being a free person and having a choice to do what you want with your life. And when we're addicted to alcohol or drugs, we're not free. Right? And it's not only alcohol or drugs. If you're addicted to gambling, you're not free. If you're addicted to sex, you're not free. If you're addicted to anger, you're not free. Anytime that you lose control of yourself and you allow something to take over your life, no matter what it is, right? You've lost your freedom. Right? And there's people who don't want to die. They don't want to get cancer of the lung. Huh? They know that cigarettes can kill them. And they don't want to die. So why do they smoke? Because they can't stop. They have no control. So, what Yetzias Mitzvah, what Passover is really all about, is feeling the value of being a Ben Chorin, not being a slave to Paro, and not being a slave to cocaine, and not being a slave to Oxycontin, or to heroin, or to alcohol, or to marijuana, or to anything else. Now, we understand what it means to be a slave, and we understand what it means to be free. How many people who are going to be celebrating Passover would really understand what the Yetzias Mitzrayim is all about? They really think it's all about what happened several thousand years ago when we got out of Egypt, which was a big event. I'm not denying it. 2 million, 3 million people being in bondage and coming out, that's a big deal. But that's not what Passover is about. That's not what the matzah is about. Right? So come to think of it, out of all of Yerushalayim, there's only going to be a handful of people who know what Passover is all about. Okay? So, we know what Passover is all about. Okay? It's the value of being free. And, we want to be sober for life. Not for 28 days or for 4 months or a year or 2 years. We want to be sober for life. And I think that one of the things that can keep us sober for life is to focus on the fact that only if we're sober are we free. And by the same token, there's multiple addictions. Yeah. You can get off of drugs and be addicted to something else. And even if you don't have gambling addiction or sexual addiction or whatever, right? If you're not free to make choices, I mean, there are people, there's a guy in Pittsburgh he died a few years ago, multimillionaire. He was 90 years old. If he lived to be 2,000 years old, he couldn't use that tenth of his money. Yeah? He goes into the office every day to make more money. What the hell for? What are you going to do with it? Yeah? And they asked J. Paul Getty, multi-billionaire, how much is enough? So he says, just a little bit more. Right? Now, if that ain't addiction, I don't know what is. So, some people who are fine people, community pillars, they're addicts. Right? They've lost control. A guy can be addicted to his office. There are people who stay at the office and they don't go home. They've got a wife and children. They're stuck in the office. And the office can be an addiction. But they don't think of it that way. Nobody thinks of a CEO of a major corporation that he's an addict because he goes to the office every day and stays there till 9 o'clock at night. But you see, we've got opportunity to learn from our experience of addiction to chemicals to apply that to everything else, to apply that to every other area of life. As to how we relate to other people. You don't want to be enslaved by other people, and you also don't want to enslave other people. And I think that there's a lot of marriages that go to hell because either the husband or the wife tries to control the other person. Right? And the husband is making a slave out of the wife, or the wife is making a slave out of the husband. I think it's important to think of our children and realize that they have a right to be free people. Well, they might not have a good judgment when they're 10 or 11 years old, but we have to respect their right to be free. Okay? And I think that if we set limits for our kids, they'll accept it as long as they know that we're doing it for their own good, not for our good. And that we respect their right to be free. So you see, that's what I think that Pesach is all about. And that's why what happened when I went to my first meeting in 1961, that I realized what the 12-step program is all about and what recovery is all about. And so I still go to meetings whenever I can. I don't go as often as I used to, but on the other hand, I never drank and I never used drugs. But I go to meetings because the 12-step has taught me something about character formation. That my job is to be the best human being I can be, and the only way to do that is to get rid of the defects that human beings have. And I got them. And so I found AA to be a program that can help people overcome their character defects. So even though I never drank, I use the 12-step program every day. Now, I really think that Bill Wilson plagiarized the works on Jewish ethics of Musar. He couldn't have found it elsewhere. I don't know how he got access to it. Because in one of my books I said that if I had to write a program for recovery based on the Sifrei Musar, it would be the 12-step program word for word. Word for word. Because everything that it says in the 12-step program is in the Talmud. Talmud says that a person's Yetzer Hara, right, his evil inclination, is so powerful that he could never resist it if it weren't for the help of God. Hey, that's the first step. Right? And then it says in the Talmud, don't rely on your judgment. Make God's will your will. Step number 3. Okay? To do a cheshbon hanefesh, an accounting, a personal accounting. It's the 4th step. To share it with another person. That's in the instructions of Rabbi Elimelech of Lezhensk. To make a list of people you've offended and to try to make amends. To try to get rid of your character defects. And when you're ready to do so, to ask God for help. You know, the great tzaddik of the last century, the Chofetz Chaim, nobody ever saw him angry. He was in perfect control of his behavior. Every night at 12 o'clock he used to come into the shul and open up the Aron Kodesh, the Ark, and used to pray and cry bitterly, praying to God to remove his anger. He was never enraged. Nobody ever saw him in anger, because he could control that. But he couldn't control feeling anger when somebody provoked him. And he didn't like the feeling. But he was helpless to do anything about it. Right? But there was one who could do something about it, and that was God. So he asked God to take his anger away. What step is that? 7? Okay. I mean, and as you go on, you know, it's word for word what the Talmud says. Well, now I got a question. How come there are many people who know the Talmud, they're students of Torah, they know the Musar books, and they're addicts? Right? If the 12-step program is taken out of the Talmud, then a person who knows the Talmud should know the 12-step program thoroughly. Why doesn't it work for them? And I think the answer is very simple. When we go to a lecture of Torah ethics and we listen to it, we walk away with the idea, those are fine ideas. We really ought to live like that. Those are very fine ways of life. When you walk away from a 12-step meeting, if you're really interested in recovery, you walk away with a feeling, if I deviate from this program, I die. And that's the feeling that you don't get in the yeshivas. And that's one of the things that the 12-step program helped me learn. How to learn Talmud and how to learn Musar. I think that for in recovery, and we're in sincere recovery, we realize what the Talmud says. The Talmud says, Aveira goreret aveira. One sin will lead to another. We know that one drink leads to another. All right? We know that one Percocet is going to lead to more. All right? So we know that the idea of Aveira goreret is aveira. But we know it for real, because we've been there. Right? Some people who have slipped and done an Avera, by mistake they put on the light on Shabbos. They forgot it was Shabbos. Right? Oh, shucks, I shouldn't have done that. Wait a minute. What about Averas Avera? What's this going to lead to? I had a guy go through Gateway. This was his last chance at his job. One more drunk and he's finished. He gets fired. He didn't want to lose his job. So he did very well at Gateway, and he went to AA and was going 90-90 and doing everything he was supposed to. Then one day I get a call from the operator at Gateway that there's an emergency call. This guy wants to reach me. So I called him, and the guy was panicky. He said he went to a friend's house for a celebration, the daughter's graduation party or something, and the guy offered him a drink, and he said, no, thank you, I don't drink. Oh, okay. He said, you can have some punch? He gave him some punch, and he took one sip of the punch, and he realized the punch was spiked. So he ran to the phone and called Gateway to try and reach me. And he said, I panicked, what do I do? Should I put myself in the hospital for a couple of days? I'm afraid I'm going to end up another drunk and lose my job. He realized that even though a little bit of alcohol got into his system accidentally, it still would do what alcohol does, because he knows what Avera Goreret Avera means. You know, the most frum Jew does not know what Avera Goreret Avera means. See, there's so much that we know from our experience. And that's why, people say addiction is one illness that when you recover from it, you're better than new. And when I was in Pittsburgh, and I was president of the medical society, I had to choose doctors for myself. I had to choose a doctor for my grandchildren. All of my doctors came from the program. Why? Because I wanted the best. And I know where the best are. Now, I'm not saying that every person who's in the recovery program is a saint. But people who take the program seriously and really live by the 12 steps, right, and really live one day at a time and take it seriously, they're the best people in the world. I know some of the people in the program closely. They are physically incapable of lying. No white lies, no pink lies, no gray lies, no lies. They can't do it. Why? Because they know that lying is part of the addiction. Right? Lying doesn't lead to a relapse. Lying is a relapse. One guy who was in recovery early in his first year said to me, getting off the drugs is tough, but stopping to lie was much tougher. Becomes nature, right? My friend Izzy. Right? Izzy used to say, I lie and I don't know it. Right? And one of the things to do in recovery is to make a commitment. I'm not going to lie no matter what. Right? And if telling the truth means I have to pay a price for it, that's tough, man. I'll pay the price. And that's why people who take recovery seriously, right, are better than people who are non-addicts. You realize that I've spent the last 50 years of my life in the companionship of the program. Why? That's really the only place where I feel comfortable. Well, I feel comfortable in going into a yeshiva or going into a beis medrash, but I don't really belong there. I don't really identify. But when I come into the program, I identify with all you guys. And I pretty much know what many of you are feeling, because after working in the field for over 40 years, there's very little that I don't know about addiction and about the emotions of an addict. Let me tell you something else, okay? Why I like addiction. Did you ever think the fact that many of us had recourse to chemicals in order to get over some painful emotion? Stress, anxiety, depression, you name it. Right? And the chemicals are a great tranquilizer. Damn it, they work. Right? So that's how we dealt with our emotions, our painful emotions. What about those people out there who don't use alcohol and drugs? What do they do with their emotions? What do they do with their painful emotions? How do they handle it? They're not using chemicals. How do they handle their painful emotions? And I came to the conclusion that some people don't have a problem having painful emotions because they don't have the same sensitivity that we have. I found that addicts are the most sensitive people in the world. And we hurt in ways which other people don't even understand. And they can't understand us. You see, when I associate with straight people, it's like eating food without salt. You know, there's not much color to their life. I mean, they're fine people that do everything right. There's not much color to life. But an addict has a lot of color to his life. And when they, during the addiction, the colors are all dark. So when we recover, we don't lose that emotional sensitivity. We just learn how to deal with it. Okay. And that's why I like to associate with people who are in recovery. I feel comfortable. I'm a very emotional person. And like I said, straight people don't interest me. So now we know a little bit about what we're going to do Passover night. Right? We're going to sit by the Seder and eat matzah and drink grape juice. Right? And talk about how our ancestors 3,000 years ago got out of Egypt. And everybody around the table is going to be reading the Haggadah and thinking about celebrating the independence, how we got out of Egypt. This is okay. But they're missing the point. Yeah? What did the Passover do for me? Right? So I wrote a book called From Bondage to Freedom. It's a commentary on the Haggadah. And what it shows us is how the entire Haggadah can be seen as an instruction for recovery. Not only to stop using drugs, not only to stop using alcohol or to stop the gambling or the sexual addiction, but also to become independent on ourselves. You know, a lot of stuff that I've written about is about self-esteem. Because I believe that self-esteem is the most important thing in a person's life. And needless to say, addicts have their self-esteem in the lower basement. Right? And it's not because of the addiction. Right? I mean, I was never addicted, and my self-esteem was a disaster. And that's why I know so much about self-esteem, because I had to fight to get out of it. But you know, if you're a slave, you really can't have much self-esteem. In order to feel good about yourself, you have to be a free person. And we've learned what it is to be free. So come Passover, we're going to spend 7 days celebrating our personal freedom. The Egyptian thing is okay, but the real message is our personal freedom.